Mia lay screaming on the pavement, her tiny arm twisted at an unnatural angle, while Claudine Whitaker stood over her gripping a steel animal control pole like a weapon. Theo, her service dog, barked furiously, shielding her broken body from the woman who had just snapped her bone without remorse. And as I stepped into that nightmare, barefoot and burning with cold fury, I knew this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore, this was war. My name is Nathan Carter, and if you passed me on the sidewalk in Willow Ridge, you'd probably peg me as just another middle-aged single dad, blue flannel shirt, quiet demeanor, a black lab at my side, and a little girl with bright eyes and a medical walker by my hip. You wouldn't know about the 20 years I spent overseas as a covert operative with the CIA, or the missions I ran in places no American would ever want to visit. You wouldn't know that I've tracked war criminals, intercepted weapons deals, or that I've seen what power looks like when it's abused. But even after all that, I never expected the war I'd end up fighting would start in a well-manicured suburban neighborhood, over a service dog and a woman with too much time and way too much authority. After my wife Jennifer died of an aneurysm in her sleep, everything changed. Our daughter Mia was just 8 then, soft-spoken, brilliant, and dealing with the pain of losing her mom while managing a condition most people can't pronounce. Mia was born with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a genetic disorder affecting her joints and connective tissues. Some days, she could walk unaided. Other days, her knees buckled without warning, or her wrists dislocated from something as simple as opening a door. But she never complained. Never once. That girl has more grit than any soldier I ever served with. When Jennifer passed, I requested early retirement from active service and took a private cybersecurity job. I wanted Mia closer to top-tier pediatric care and a community that looked safe. That's how we landed in Willow Ridge, a gated development in Santa Clarita, California. On paper, it was perfect. Excellent school district. Wheelchair-accessible sidewalks. A community center with adaptive programming. Single-level homes that didn't require stairs. I should have known better. It started barely 2 weeks after we moved in. Mia was in the front yard with Theo, her service dog, a black Labrador trained for mobility support, medication retrieval, and deep pressure comfort when her joints flared. Theo was calm, disciplined, and wore his bright orange vest with service dog, do not pet stitched across it. I was inside assembling Mia's new adjustable bed when I heard the sound that instantly put my instincts on edge, clipped footsteps on gravel, followed by a voice that carried the thin layer of politeness masking a demand. "Excuse me. Excuse me. Young lady." I moved to the window and saw a woman standing over Mia, who had her hand tightly wrapped around Theo's harness. The woman looked to be late 50s, slim in a Pilates and salads kind of way, with a bobbed haircut that hadn't moved in a single breeze, and a sleeveless golf shirt too white for someone not aiming to intimidate. "I'm Claudine Whitaker," she said sharply when I stepped outside. "President of the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association." She held a thick leather binder like it was a judge's gavel. "Your daughter is in violation of our community's covenant." "I'm Nathan Carter," I said, keeping my voice level. "We just moved in. This is Mia, and that's Theo, her service dog." "There are no dogs permitted in common areas of Willow Ridge," she snapped, ignoring my outstretched hand. "It's in the bylaws, Section 9, Article 4. Pets must remain indoors or in the rear yard, behind fencing." "He's not a pet," I said calmly, even as I saw Mia shrinking into herself. "He's a federally protected service animal. Mia has a documented disability under the ADA and the Fair Housing Act, both of which override HOA pet restrictions." Claudine's lips tightened like she'd just bitten into a lemon. "Everyone says that these days. Emotional support hamsters. Therapy lizards. We've heard it all. If you want to avoid a fine, I'll need documentation by tomorrow. Otherwise, the citation stands, and they increase weekly. Already sent it to your office last week." "Certified mail," I replied. "You signed for it." She blinked, caught off guard for half a second. Then, "Regardless, visible animals in the front yard send the wrong message about our neighborhood." We pride ourselves on order and presentation, Mr. Carter. This isn't a kennel. Mia's eyes watered, but she stood firm. Theo helps me walk, she whispered. He keeps me from falling. Well, let's not make a scene, Claudine said, brushing invisible lint from her collar. I'm just here to enforce the rules. Good day. And with that, she turned on her spotless sneakers and strode away like she'd just conquered a small village. I didn't say anything to Mia right then. I knelt beside her, patted Theo's head, and waited until the color came back to her cheeks. But inside, I was already calculating. People like Claudine think they can intimidate you into submission. They're used to power being unchallenged. What they don't expect, what they can't handle, is patience. And precision. Over the next few weeks, the citations rolled in. One for excessive barking, Theo hadn't made a peep. Another for uncollected waste found in the cul-de-sac nowhere near our property. A warning for obstructive equipment, Mia's walker, briefly left by the mailbox while she went inside to grab her book bag. Each time, the fine increased. I documented every notice. I scanned every envelope. I photographed timestamps, sidewalk angles, even the shadows cast on the lawn when Theo wasn't anywhere near the violation. One night, while reviewing footage from our doorbell camera, I saw it, Claudine snapping a photo of Mia's adaptive bicycle, muttering to herself about visual nuisances. Still, I said nothing. But not everyone was willing to stay silent. Kendra Morris, our neighbor 2 houses down, stopped by with homemade muffins one morning. She was in her 40s, wore sneakers like armor, and carried herself like someone who'd spent her life standing up for others. Watch your back, she said as she handed me the tin. Claudine's been like this for years. She went after a Filipino family last fall because their cousin stayed too long after a funeral. Tried to evict an elderly vet over his flagpole. And she's got her claws into the city council. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? I asked. Kendra shrugged. People don't want trouble. And Claudine knows how to use fear. She's never gone after the wrong person, though, until now. I nodded slightly. Kendra didn't know who I really was, but she didn't need to. All she needed to know was that I wasn't backing down. I hadn't told anyone in Willow Ridge about my time in the CIA. Officially, I worked in digital security compliance, which was true enough for background checks. But under the surface, I still had contacts at Langley. Still had access to tools. Still knew how to run an operation. And if Claudine Whitaker wanted a war over my daughter's dog, she was about to find out that some battles aren't fought with lawyers. They're fought with evidence. With allies. And with consequences. I just needed to wait. Watch. And document every move. Because justice? Justice is slow, but when it hits like thunder. And I was going to make sure Claudine heard every last rumble. To be continued in Chapter 2. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 2 in the same tone and style? It happened on a Thursday, the kind of late fall day in Santa Clarita where the air finally stops feeling like a blow dryer and the sunlight takes on that warm, golden quality that makes you think, maybe, just maybe, things are finally settling down. That morning, Mia had been excited. Her physical therapist had cleared her to try a new set of resistance band stretches, and she wanted to practice outside with Theo. I agreed, set up a mat in the driveway, and promised I'd keep the front door cracked while I worked on a client's security audit. Across the street, Kendra sat on her porch with a legal pad in her lap and a cup of chamomile tea beside her. She'd become an anchor for us these past few weeks. When Mia was tired, Kendra read to her. When I was overwhelmed, she reminded me to breathe. Everything felt, if not normal, then at least calm. That's the part that haunts me. How calm everything was, right before it shattered. I was midway through writing an encryption patch when I heard it. A bark. Then a scream. Not the kind of scream that kids make when they fall or get startled. This was something else, raw, high-pitched, the sound of agony. I didn't think. I was up and outside in seconds, barefoot, my pulse already racing. And there she was. Mia was curled on the concrete, her arm twisted unnaturally against her chest, tears streaking her face. Theo stood over her, barking ferociously, but not moving, trained never to bite, only to protect. And standing above them both, holding a metal animal control pole like some righteous executioner, was Claudine Whitaker. I saw red, but not in the way people mean when they talk about rage. Mine was cold, focused. The same kind of tunnel vision I'd felt in Iraq when I'd breached a door not knowing what was on the other side. You don't yell. You don't charge. You gather information. And then you act. What did you do? My voice came out low, even. Deadly. She grabbed me, she broke my arm, Mia sobbed. I was enforcing HOA policies, Claudine snapped. Your animal was off-leash in a common area after repeated violations. I came to impound him for community safety. She resisted. She's 10, I said flatly, moving to kneel beside Mia. Her skin was pale, her lips trembling. And that's a service dog. I warned you, Mr. Carter. You people think the rules don't apply. I turned slightly to look at Kendra, who stood frozen at the curb, one hand gripping her phone. Did you get it? I asked. I recorded everything, she said, her voice shaking with fury. She walked straight up with that pole, didn't even announce herself. Theo wasn't off-leash, he was standing beside Mia like always. When Mia tried to shield him, Claudine yanked her arm. Hard. I heard the snap. I nodded once. Call an ambulance. Then I pulled my phone from my back pocket and dialed 911. I need law enforcement and medical to Willow Ridge. A disabled minor has been assaulted by an adult with a metal object. Injury appears serious. I have video evidence and a witness. Claudine scoffed. You're seriously calling the police over this? My husband plays golf with the sheriff. This will be handled internally. I didn't respond. Instead, I typed out a short, encrypted text to a contact I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. Start digging on Claudine Whitaker, Willow Ridge HOA. Urgent. The ambulance arrived in 6 minutes. Police, in 9. Officer Ellis stepped out of the cruiser, tall and calm, with the kind of presence that said he wasn't new to tense situations. We'd worked together once on a clearance case for a high-ranking defense contractor. He knew who I was, and more importantly, knew how to read a scene. He approached me first. Mr. Carter, he said professionally. Can you walk me through what happened? I gave him the rundown, step by step, while paramedics gently lifted Mia onto a stretcher. She winced as they secured her arm in a temporary splint. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You're safe. Daddy's got this." Ellis reviewed the video Kendra had captured. His jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he said to Claudine, "I need you to set that pole down and place your hands behind your back." "This is absurd," Claudine sputtered. "Do you even know who I am?" "Ma'am," he repeated, "you assaulted a child with a disability. You have the right to remain silent." As the Miranda rights rolled off his tongue, Claudine's expression changed. The confidence drained from her face, replaced with something ugly, panic. She looked at me, eyes narrowing. "You set this up," she hissed. "No," I said quietly. "You did." When the cruiser pulled away with Claudine in the back seat, I walked inside and pulled the blinds shut. I didn't want to see the neighbors gathering or hear the whispers starting. I wanted to be with my daughter. But my phone buzzed before I could leave the foyer. It was my contact. Found something. Financial red flags. Offshore wires. More to come. I sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the message. It wasn't over, not even close. That night, Kendra sat with Mia in the hospital while I gave a full statement to the detectives assigned. The X-rays showed a complete fracture of the radius. Clean, but painful. The ER cast was bright purple. Mia picked it herself. By morning, the footage had made its way to social media, thanks to Kendra's quiet reach in legal advocacy circles. The headline was brutal and effective. HOA president breaks disabled child's arm over service dog. By noon, every major news outlet in Southern California was camped outside the gates of Willow Ridge. By sundown, reporters in D.C. were calling my burner phone. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled every citation we'd received out of a drawer, photographed them one by one, then mapped the timeline against Claudine's public HOA activity. Fines levied against families with similar infractions, non-white, elderly, disabled. Vendors linked to shell companies. Legal invoices paid to firms with no physical address. It was like seeing a spider web with one strand pulled too tight. It was starting to snap. Mia fell asleep that night with Theo curled next to her on the hospital bed. Her good hand gripped his collar like a lifeline. I stayed in the recliner beside her, reviewing documents until my eyes burned. At 2:43 a.m., a final message from my contact came through. Insurance firm settlement. Claudine exited under quiet fraud investigation. NDA sealed by her husband's political friends. You're not just dealing with HOA drama, Nathan. This runs deep. I sat there in the dark, listening to the quiet beeps of Mia's monitor and the soft rhythm of Theo's breathing. This wasn't just about a dog anymore. This was about power, abuse, and the kind of corruption that thrives when no one is willing to fight back. But Claudine had made one fatal mistake. She thought she could bully a little girl with fragile joints and a soft voice. She didn't realize the kind of man that little girl called Dad. She would. The next chapter in this war had already begun. And I wasn't going to stop until every secret she'd buried came to light. 3 days after Claudine Whitaker was led away in handcuffs, the front gates of Willow Ridge still buzzed with reporters, camera crews, and stunned residents walking their dogs a little more confidently, as if the air had changed somehow, less tense, less heavy. But inside our home, between hospital visits and follow-ups with orthopedic specialists, I wasn't focused on the news. I was focused on Mia. Her cast was snug and purple, decorated already with doodles from Kendra and a big smiley face drawn by the nurse who reset the fracture. Mia never once asked for sympathy. She simply held Theo a little tighter at night and told me, softly, "I'm okay, Dad. But I don't want her to hurt anyone else." That was all the permission I needed. While the rest of the world reacted to the headline, HOA president assaults disabled child over service dog, I started building something far deeper than outrage. I built a case. The financial breadcrumbs came first. Citations with fine amounts that didn't match HOA bylaws. Multiple invoices for the same landscaping job, each paid to a different LLC. I traced the tax ID numbers, ran them through LexisNexis and secure databases, and started seeing patterns, one shell company routing payments to another, then to an offshore account in the Caymans. The account holder? Claudine Whitaker. My contact at Homeland Security forwarded me a sealed report from 2017, Internal Fraud Review at Polaris Assurance Group. The name was familiar. Claudine had worked there, retired early, the story went. But the truth? She had been quietly dismissed during an ethics investigation into embezzlement. The board buried the case thanks to pressure from her husband's network of political allies. There was no prosecution. No public record. Just a signed NDA and a fat severance. Until now. I looped in the bureau. My old colleagues in financial crimes picked it up like bloodhounds catching a fresh trail. Agent Marla Chen, sharp as ever, confirmed within 24 hours the Willow Ridge HOA's books were a minefield of misconduct. Funds meant for community maintenance had been siphoned. Overcharges on HOA dues routed through fictitious service providers. Kickbacks to Claudine. False citations issued to families who dared to challenge her authority, particularly minorities, immigrants, and anyone with a disability. The HOA wasn't just badly managed. It was a front for white-collar theft. And now, it had blood on its hands. The HOA board called an emergency meeting that Saturday. For the first time in years, the room at the community center was full. No catered lunch, no smug smirks. Just residents who had finally seen what was festering behind the marble sign and security gates. Kendra took the podium. She wore a simple navy blazer, no makeup, her voice steady as she read the charges filed against Claudine: felony assault, fraud, wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy. Then she opened the floor. What followed was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed, even in congressional hearings. One by one, neighbors stood and shared their stories. The Patel family, whose visiting relatives had been threatened with eviction for unauthorized gatherings. The Romeros, fined repeatedly for a wheelchair ramp their son needed to get into the house. An elderly woman named Ruth, who broke down crying as she described being shamed for the scent of her home-cooked food. This was never about rules, Kendra said when the testimonies ended. It was about control, abuse of authority, and using power to punish the vulnerable. The vote to remove Claudine as HOA president was unanimous. Kendra was appointed interim president. One of her first actions? Rewriting the bylaws. Clear protections for service animals. Explicit allowances for disability accommodations. Transparent financial reporting requirements. Independent audits. No more unchecked authority. No more hiding behind policy to inflict cruelty. Meanwhile, the criminal investigation escalated. Claudine's house, a 6,800 square foot villa perched above the ridge with a panoramic view of the valley, was raided. Agents found falsified vendor contracts, burner phones, and ledgers with names and numbers tied to known laundering channels. Her husband, once the smooth-talking backdoor dealmaker, flipped fast. He offered testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. That betrayal hit Claudine harder than the arrest. In court, she appeared diminished, hair disheveled, eyes hollow. During the preliminary hearing, her attorney tried to frame the incident as a tragic misunderstanding, painting Claudine as a community servant caught in an unfortunate clash. But the DA didn't flinch. Your client assaulted a disabled 10-year-old child in a premeditated attempt to remove a federally protected service animal, she said, voice icy. We have video. Witnesses. Medical records. And now, financial crimes that show a pattern of corruption going back over a decade. This was not an accident. This was a pattern. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I sat in the gallery, silent, watching as witness after witness dismantled the image Claudine had spent years crafting. The final nail came when a forensic accountant mapped out the full scale of her theft, $2.8 million, skimmed through inflated fees and fake compliance charges. All of it laid bare. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. The judge handed down the sentence with no hesitation: 18 years in federal prison, forfeiture of all assets, including the Willow Ridge Villa. A permanent bar from holding any fiduciary or leadership role in any organization, public or private. But that wasn't the end. With DOJ approval, the forfeited home was auctioned. It was purchased, ironically, by a nonprofit that trains service dogs for children with disabilities. They turned Claudine's luxury estate into a rehabilitation center and training school. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. 6 weeks after the verdict, Willow Ridge held its first community fair under Kendra's leadership. There were booths for legal resources, adaptive sports demos, and, at Mia's suggestion, a Meet the Service Dogs tent where kids could learn about working animals. Mia wore a purple dress that matched her cast and stood beside Theo with a smile so wide, it made something tighten in my chest. When a little boy asked, "Is that your dog?" she answered, "He's not just my dog. He's my teammate." She gave a short speech that afternoon, just a few sentences, but every word clear and brave. Sometimes people treat you different because you move different. But that doesn't mean you don't belong. And sometimes the ones who look strong aren't strong at all. Real strength is helping others. That's what Theo does for me. And that's what justice looks like. Afterward, my phone buzzed with a message from an old friend at DOJ. Heard about your case. We're forming a task force on HOA abuse. You in? I didn't hesitate. I'm in. Because the truth is, there are Claudines in every community, small tyrants hiding behind rules, using bureaucracy as a weapon. But there are also warriors. People like Kendra. People like Mia. And people like you, reading this now, who won't stay quiet when the powerful prey on the vulnerable. Mia's cast came off a month later. The doctor said the bone had healed stronger at the break, nature's way of reinforcing what's been damaged. I couldn't help but think that maybe people worked the same way. Maybe communities did too. At bedtime, Mia asked if we could visit the training center that used to be Claudine's house. I want to tell the puppies thank you, she said. Because if what happened to me means more kids get help, then maybe it wasn't all bad. She rested her head on Theo's side and whispered, sometimes broken things come back stronger, huh? I brushed a curl from her forehead and nodded. Yeah, kiddo. They really do. And that's where this story ends, not with revenge, but with restoration. Not with fear, but with purpose. Willow Ridge isn't perfect, but it's awake now. Watching. Listening. Stronger where it broke. And as for me, I'm still watching too. Quietly. Carefully. Because sometimes, the biggest difference we can make isn't in what we destroy, but in what we rebuild. Thank you for staying with us through this powerful story. As the author, and as someone who believes deeply in the strength of quiet resilience, I want to take a moment to reflect on the lessons buried beneath the headlines, court rulings, and viral outrage. Because what happened to Mia, and what Nathan did in response, wasn't just a story of justice. It was a story about boundaries, bravery, and the long road to accountability. Here's the truth, bullies don't always look like the ones we learned about on the playground. Sometimes they wear power suits, sit on HOA boards, and smile politely while pushing policies that hurt the most vulnerable. Abuse of power doesn't always scream, it often whispers, hides behind rules, and thrives in silence. That's why silence is dangerous. And that's why people like Nathan matter. What Nathan teaches us is that justice isn't loud, it's patient, it's meticulous, and it's relentless. It doesn't always come with sirens and handcuffs. Sometimes, it comes with timestamps, documentation, and an unshakable will to protect what's right. You don't have to be a federal agent to stand up to injustice. You just have to be willing to act when others are afraid. Mia, too, taught us something. Real strength isn't measured in miles run or battles fought, it's measured in kindness, in courage, and in the ability to turn pain into purpose. Her ability to face what happened, speak out, and advocate for others is a reminder that even our smallest voices can make the biggest impact. So here's my advice to you. Know your rights. Learn them, memorize them, teach them to your children. Document everything. Even when it feels petty. The details are your armor. Build alliances. One neighbor may be easy to silence. A community is not. Don't assume someone won't fight back just because they seem quiet. And don't mistake kindness for weakness. To those who've been pushed down, overlooked, or underestimated, remember, sometimes broken things come back stronger. Just like Mia. Just like Willow Ridge. And finally, from all of us here at Us, Justice Stories, thank you. Thank you for listening. For caring. For believing that stories like these matter. Your support keeps this channel alive and keeps the light shining on injustices that too often go unnoticed. If this story moved you, we ask you to share it, comment, and subscribe. You never know who might need to hear it. Because the more we speak up, the fewer people suffer in silence. Until next time, stay aware, stay strong, and never stop believing in justice.